And so next in our news stack is more calls for global government and for global population control. Jurriaan Maessen's article, Ehrlich, Hansen, Lovelock, we must build an entirely new kind of global society. And so you've got the United Nations Environmental Program, who's published their, quote, key messages from these top eugenicists, from these top climate change advocates saying it's all man-made. That's Paul Ehrlich, who worked with John P. Holdren, who's currently in the White House. He's the one who wrote Population Bomb, itself an overdriven model to sell people on population control. You've got the climate guy, James Lovelock, who says we should have fewer than 1 billion people, ideally. And you've got NASA's James Hansen, who's always running scrimmage for the data, trying to sell the public on it. And they say in their new report, Environment and Developing Changes, the imperative to act, that the UN at its upcoming 2012 Earth Summit should push for global government population control. Globally, we must find a better means to agree and implement measures to achieve collective goals. They go on to say, in the face of an absolutely unprecedented emergency, society has no choice but to take dramatic action to avert a collapse of civilization. Either we will change our ways and build an entirely new kind of global society, or they will be changed for us. Does this sound familiar? We just covered this yesterday in the Peak Civilization article, where they predict a dramatic decline in the population starting in the year 2030, when they predict an all-out global collapse economically, food, resources-wise, and otherwise, driving a larger population decline. And they say it's an emergency, therefore the only way to avert it is to buy into this global government scheme. And so you've got the Club of Rome, a eugenicist oligarchical meeting group, pushing for this 40 years ago. You've got Paul Ehrlich with the Population Bomb pushing this 40 years ago. And it all ties into what we see this year, this convoy of United Nations vehicles and other NGO vehicles, all trying to take us down the same road to global government, to save us from ourselves, to save the earth. And so let's look at some of the quotes. Where are they trying to go with a globally run population program? Well, we have to look no further than ecoscience, which is Paul Ehrlich, named in this article, who is part of these quotes, and John P. Holdren, who's the White House science czar, who we've covered at length. Coercive fertility control, they write in Ecoscience, the development of a long-term sterilizing capsule could be implanted under the skin and removed when pregnancy is desired. It opens additional possibilities for coercive fertility control. They want to keep everyone from breeding unless you're authorized. Indeed, they go on to say, it's been concluded that compulsory population control laws, even including laws requiring compulsory abortion, could be sustained under the existing Constitution. They're talking about the United States of America, folks. If the population can't be brought under control, they go on to say. There's even more quotes from Ecoscience. And here's where they begin to get into how we need a planetary regime, a global government, in other words, to regulate population. What do they say? Perhaps those agencies, combined with the United Nations Environmental Program, the very group named in today's article, and the United Nations population agencies, of which there's a few, might eventually be developed into a planetary regime, sort of international super agency for population, resources, and environment. This should sound very close to the Club of Rome's proposals and these studies coming out of MIT, where they say because of diminishing resources, because of them not embracing alternatives, that's going to trigger a population decline. So Ehrlich and Holdren go on to describe the planetary regime, or the world government, they want to set up. Such a comprehensive planetary regime could control the development, administration, conservation, distribution of all natural resources, including food on the international market. What are they talking about? They're talking about restricting access to food to control the population. It goes on. The planetary regime might be given responsibility for determining the optimum population for the world and for each region, and for arbitrating various countries' shares within their regional limits. They're talking about giving food rations in proportion to the population. And what will they do if you don't have If you have too many people in the population, you won't get the food. It goes on because this is an older idea. Bertrand Russell espoused virtually the same idea in 1953, long before ecoscience came out. An International Food Authority, Bertrand Russell writes, could be used to deal with this problem of increasing population and decreasing food supplies. It will be necessary to find ways of preventing an increase of world population. And he goes on. If this is to be done other than by wars, pestilence, and famines, it will demand a powerful international authority, basically the same as this planetary regime they're talking about. The quote goes on. This authority should deal out the world's food to the various nations in proportion to their population. If any nation subsequently increased its population, it should not on that account receive any more food. The motive for not increasing population would therefore be very compelling. And what a dangerous hunger game it is. Henry Kissinger says almost the same thing in his National Security Memo number 200 in the early 70s about food as a weapon. Family planning, performance, and population control should be taken into account for appraisal of assistance requirements by USAID. They're talking about administering food to developing world nations and withholding food if they don't curb their population. And it goes on. Would food be considered an instrument of national power? Is the U.S. prepared to accept food rationing to help people who can't or won't control their population growth? So when you see Ehrlich, Hansen, Lovelock in today's article, if we could go back to that graphic about how we must build an entirely new kind of global society, they are talking about building up such a world mechanism that you could save the environment by controlling population and especially by controlling food. After all, that's what MIT and the Club of Rome say is going to be the downfall of humanity, is when the food resources run out, when the energy runs out, and on, that will trigger a decline in the population. The problem is it's all manufactured by these elitists, and they've been developing this agenda for at least half a century, really more than a century, and it's just sickening. And it's all in the news this year, in the past few days, in the past few weeks, trying to sell you on it. And I say don't buy it.
I really enjoy it when the globalists try to poison us, and, well, we resist them via a free market system. Hello, my fellow info warriors. Alex Jones here, introducing you to the ProPure family of gravity-fed filters. Now, you know that the globalists are filling our water with radioactive isotopes, fluoride, lead, mercury, arsenic. And one of the few systems that can efficiently and economically remove or reduce down to non-detectable levels these poisons are gravity-fed filters. And ProPure is the top of the line. Their filters are impregnated with silver, a natural antibiotic. On top of that, they're bigger, so they filter faster. You don't have to prime these the first time you use them. It's amazing. Go to Infowars.com and click on the shopping cart link to see the entire family of these babies. Now, the fluoride they add to our water is so tiny that most filters can't cut it out. But ProPure has their system that will, again, reduce it to non-detectable levels, almost get all of it out of there. That's also available. And if you look at the different systems they offer, the ProPure Big Brush Finish is on a stand, so it's easier on a table or at your restaurant or wherever you have it to go up with a glass or a mug and fill it up. Then there's this big baby right here, the ProPure King large version. Got a lot of different options that come with it. Also, they have the ProPure Big, probably one of the best values out there. And of course, it's burnished stainless steel. And then what I use on my RV, something that's great for your hunting cabin or the back porch, is the ProPure Traveler. Small and portable, but packs a huge punch, cleans out all that garbage. They also have the glass sight spigot, so you don't have to take the top off and look in the bottom area to see how much water. You can see how fast it's filtering with this optional system. The globalists obviously are hitting us through our water. It's time to take control of our lives. It's time to not give our children and families these poisons, and these systems cut it down to non-detectable levels across the board. ProPure is the name. I only promote what I believe in. And I use ProPure in my home and my office. And I recommend that you check out the information on ProPure at Infowars.com. We already have the lowest price at Infowars.com on the ProPure gravity filter system. But when you add in the 10% off when InfoWarriors use the product code WATER at Infowars.com, nobody can top it. So again, it's a win-win-win. Stop drinking the poison water, checkmate the globalists when it comes to your health, and support Infowars.com and the work we're doing here. You know, many revolutionaries rob banks and things and kidnap people for funds. We promote in the free market the products we use that are about preparedness. That's how we fund this revolution against the New World Order in our move to restore our constitutional republic and the spirit of 1776 worldwide. Check it out at Infowars.com. ProPure, top of the line, #1, most powerful and effective and economical gravity-fed water system in the world. ProPure, available, discounted at Infowars.com. Don't forget product code WATER to save 10%. It's the latest generation, years in development. ProPure is the name.
The imperative to act that the UN at its upcoming 2012 Earth Summit should push for global government population control. Globally, we must find a better means to agree and implement measures to achieve collective goals. Genesis from these top climate change advocates saying it's all man-made. That's Paul Ehrlich, who worked with John P. Holdren, who's currently in the White House. He's the one who wrote Population Bomb, itself an overdriven model to sell people on population control. You've got the climate guy, James Lovelock, who says we should have fewer than 1 billion people, ideally. And you've got NASA's James Hansen, who's always running scrimmage for the data, trying to sell the public on it. And they say in their new report, Environment and Developing Changes, Global Population Control, Jurriaan Maessen's article, Ehrlich, Hansen, Lovelock, we must build an entirely new kind of global society. And so you've got the United Nations Environmental Program, who's published their, quote, key messages from these top And so next in our news stack is more calls for global government and for global